I think there's concern about how depressed NFT volumes have been. For example, the market has been quite slow over the last 12 months or so during the bear market. But under the surface, the things that I'm paying attention to are really, really exciting. We saw an explosion of incredible digitally native artwork over the last few years, and I just see that continue to evolve in all kinds of unique and interesting ways.
Hello, Nat. How is
Oh,
it going?
good. How are you? Have
Doing
you
great.
recovered from Paris?
Yeah, yeah. I got a bit sick. One day after coming back, I heard a lot of people got sick. Nothing major. I think it's the weather was a bit cold and too many events. But it was awesome. When did you get back from Paris?
Yeah, I got back a couple days ago. I was there all week for Bright Moments. We did some projects with Bright Moments. We got to support four incredible artists in residence, and then we did an event with Coinbase. We did a project with Zancan. Anyway, it was a busy week, and I agree it was very cold and rainy, but the warmth of all the people there, the community coming together was really really incredible. I don't think it stopped anybody from going to five different events in
Yeah,
a day and staying out late at night and all that fun stuff.
yeah. No, it was fantastic. I was very surprised with the amount of people that traveled, right? Like yourself, right, coming from the US to Europe, and that was many people did that, right, coming from very far away. So it was very exciting, and congrats on all the action for Highlight. As you said, you had a couple of interactions there. Zancan had the biggest, right? The most mints for a generative art collection, and it was done through Highlight, right?
It's still going on. So yeah, so Zancan, French artist, obviously, is incredible artist, well known for lots of different work across both Tezos and Ethereum. And we were really lucky to partner with him on a project that he did to support the Coinbase launch in France. I think increasingly, I'm based in California, so increasingly the regulatory situation in Europe feels a lot better and a lot clearer than what's happening in the US. And so, we were excited, and Zancan was excited, I think, to make some noise to support Coinbase and support uh, France really as a place where I think more and more crypto companies, blockchain companies, digital art companies are based. And
Yep.
so yeah, he did a project. It's called Aux Arbres, which is to the trees in English, and it's similar to some of his other explorations. It's representations of trees, but in this case, every mint is sort of like a zoomed in section of a tree, and then every 100 mints there's a broader visualization. You can see this at ozarbor.xyz, or if you go to the Highlight website, you'll find this. But you can see your piece of the tree or pieces of the tree if you've minted multiple, and then you can see how other collectors also fit within the same tree. And so there's a new tree formed every 100 mints, and we're up to, I've lost track of the numbers, 55, 56,000, I think,
Yeah. That's
mints so far. So yeah, we think this is the biggest generative art collection ever, at least collected on the blockchain, which is
yeah.
pretty cool.
No, that's fantastic. I minted one, and I did it through Farcaster using warps, which I think was very smooth experience. I think it was just one click,
Hmm.
um, and I got it in my wallet, and yeah, very nice. And I was chatting with Zancan during the Paris, and he mentioned that he believed it was the biggest collection. He was checking the numbers, but also he told me he was planning something else because, as you said, there is like a structure with the trees, and you kind of combine them. So he's not sure yet, but I suggest that maybe he should try some burning mechanism, and he said no. He doesn't like to burn. Burn is not something he's looking forward to do. So, but yeah, it's amazing. Over 50,000 pieces, and this was all powered by Highlight, right? So
Hmm.
it's a great way to kind of test and put the pressure on, right, on the platform. How
Hmm.
did you feel about that? What was the reaction from the engineers and everybody working at Highlight? Did it supported such a huge mint all well? Did you learn from the
Hmm.
experience? And yeah, so thoughts overall on that.
Yeah, overall went really smooth. We were nervous, of course, for something this big. I think we saw something like 10,000 mints in the first 10 minutes.
Wow.
So massive amount of traffic and transactions being processed. And of course, with generative art, it's more complex on the technical side, on the back end side, because every mint is unique and every mint requires the code to be run and a preview to be captured and metadata to be captured and all these things. And so um, to do that at a lot of velocity was interesting, but everything held up, yeah, really, really well. We did learn a lot. We had, a couple things to us felt like big bugs. I think, nothing too major, but getting that level of traffic and interest in a project is always really good because there's things at that scale that you learn about your systems that you're just never going to learn if you're at a small fraction of it. So yeah, we like that we got to pressure test
Yeah, pressure.
everything
Yeah.
and strengthen everything. And then the other thing we did, which was fun, and we're going to do a lot more of, hopefully. The mint was first available to about 200 people who were at a event in Paris, IRL. So you couldn't mint it virtually. You could only mint it at this event, and we had a flow set up where folks at the event could mint it gaslessly. So there was no
Ah,
gas paid. There was no mint fee paid. So Highlight charges a small mint fee, which is a couple dollars. So we didn't collect that, and the collectors could pay or sorry, could claim the NFT just with an email address. So that type of flow happening in parallel. Then with the public mint that we opened up was also just a new piece of tech that we built for this project.
yeah, that's fantastic, right? Because when you think about newcomers, right, the people that aren't used to mint or don't have a crypto wallet, and they go to one of these events, this is the best way, right, to get them on board or feel how the collecting experience. Um, and yeah, creating a crypto wallet, funding it, and then using it, signing the transaction, and then they have to store the seed phrase somewhere during the event, so it's very complicated. Um, and these kind of flows are great. So it works all on Highlight.
It's crazy in our space how uh, we almost ignore mobile completely, and this
Yeah,
is changing really fast. But
yeah,
most people use mobile. We were talking about Farcaster, which, for listeners who may not know, this is a decentralized social network similar to Twitter or X, as they call it now. And I think Farcaster, something like 90% of their usage is happening on mobile, on your phone, not on
yeah,
desktop. And so to create the whole world we live in the digital art space still is predominantly indexed on desktop. With Highlight, we see about 50-50 desktop and mobile traffic. So we know there's a lot of people browsing on mobile, but you can't really engage fully on mobile yet. So it's something we're really focused on. yeah, that was the thing, to create an experience for someone to mint just on their phone with a couple taps. And we'll talk about Farcaster and what you mentioned, and how some
Yeah.
of some of the things they're shipping over there are helping to make this easy. But I'm excited. We'll talk more about sort of where we maybe everything's going and what we're building. But I think the rest of the world is waiting for blockchain to catch up with really good mobile experiences, and we're just starting to get there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think one of the reasons why Farcaster is having so much success is because they built for mobile, right? And it's something that Dan, the founder, mentions a lot, that should be building mobile first. And do you see that in the metrics from Highlight? But maybe before that, Nat, can you tell us what's Highlight for those that aren't familiar? How do you define Highlight?
Yeah, Highlight is an open access platform for creating digital art and culture, and collecting digital art and culture. We started about 2 years ago. We started really by making tools for artists and creatives. And we did that because we found that at the time, the tools were really lacking in a bunch of fundamental ways. It was very technical to create NFT collection, or there was a lot of compromises and trade-offs where you had to pay high fees, you had to share a smart contract, you had to give away a percentage of your royalties based on how the contract was coded. You had really limited sales mechanics, so if you wanted to do anything besides just a fixed price sale, that was really complex. You'd have to figure out how to code a an auction, or whatever type of sale you wanted to run. And so we've built over the last 2 years, we've built uh, tools for artists, and so you can create any type of uh, digital art collection using Highlight, starting with simple upload an image or a GIF or whatever else, and sell it as a one of one, or do an open edition, do a limited edition. We see a lot of projects happening on Highlight that are what we call a series, which is, if you think of a set of images where each image is different. And then finally, we've been really focused for the last year or so on generative, code-based art. And so we have tools that help artists with that as well, artists like Zancan.
Yeah.
And so we were the first open access generative platform on Ethereum, launched that about 8 months ago. And what's also unique about us is we support all the major L2s that are around Ethereum. So Base, Zora, Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, and we were pretty early, I think, in believing that the cost and the speed of Ethereum mainnet were big drawbacks, and that the potential of L2s would be a really important solution for more and more users to come, and for the space to scale and to be sustainable. And so we've been really excited to see all the traction with L2s, such as Base, which is the chain that we worked with Zancan on releasing the project I mentioned.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that makes sense. And yeah, it's exciting. I've been following the development of the platform, and I mean, there are a couple of features that I find very unique. So first one is that Kayvon from Foundation, the CEO of Foundation, was in the podcast a couple of months ago, right at the time where you announced a partnership with
mhm.
Foundation. So
Yeah.
how does that work exactly? So Highlight is kind of you said providing tools. It's also a
Mhm.
way to you also provide tools to other platforms that maybe aren't as specialized, or how did this partnership what came to fruition, right? What was the reasoning behind it?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, maybe can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course, yeah. So we have a generative engine. We call it GenGen, and it is a set of back-end tools that help generative artists create projects and have those mint seamlessly and display seamlessly and be interoperable with other parts of the blockchain ecosystem, so other marketplaces and so forth. And that tooling, we spent a lot of time fine-tuning it. For anyone listening who's an artist or a collector, you're probably familiar with the experience of minting something somewhere that is code-based and having it not appear correctly in your wallet, or having issues maybe with the metadata or things like that. So there's a lot of just time and effort that goes into making sure that code-based art can display properly. And we increasingly are integrating that with other platforms, with art galleries, with DAOs. We're looking to do projects and are looking for a solution to have generative art projects released on their platform. And stepping back, right? I mean, it's the whole promise of Web3. It's very true to how we build and how we think about the world, which is the interoperability of everything we're building should be. It makes it really easy, I think, to make projects successful, and for every player in the ecosystem, I think, to work together in something that's a lot more positive sum than what we saw maybe in Web 2. And so if that sounds like a bunch of jargon, maybe it is, but I'll give you an example. We had we had 4 artists, amazing artists, who were artists in residence for Bright Moments in Paris, and they have a few things happening. One, they have created collections, generative art collections using Highlight, and those collections are being exhibited in the Foundation interface virtually. They're being exhibited IRL in Paris by Bright Moments, so they're being displayed in different formats on different screens by Bright Moments. They're being minted across at least 5 different sources. So you can mint these on Highlight, you can mint them on Foundation, you can mint them on Bright Moments, you can mint them directly through the smart contract. And very soon, we talked about Farcaster, but we're not quite there for these projects yet. But for projects like Zancan, you could also mint them on Farcaster.
Yeah.
And the idea there, we think, is really powerful, because if you're an artist, and our goal is to help artists really succeed in this new digital economy, digital ecosystem, there's different audiences that hang out at the Bright Moments Cafe in Paris, or come and visit the Highlight website or the Foundation exhibition, or are just surfing Farcaster late at night. And we want to be able to attract any of these audiences to purchase work from an artist. And so having this core level of interoperability around just basic standards, these are ERC 721 contracts that we have, and anyone can plug into them and create their own minting interface. So we think that's really cool. And a similar ethos is behind how we're approaching GenGen, which I mentioned, and other parts of our stack, just helping others plug in and be able to power the work that they want to do, which may not be a priority for us, but if we can help them do that, we think it's good for the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, that's great. I didn't think about that, but yeah, it's right that you can mint them on Foundation, you can mint them on Highlight, you can mint them on Bright Moments, or directly through the contract. That's so it's like Highlight is in the core, right? Like core, but it kind of opening the door to other platforms to kind of connect to Highlight and
It's
maybe
true, but it's also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Callo, that the artist is at the core. And the reason there is that artist owns the smart contract. And so one of the things we all think about in Web3 is platform risk. And do we want there to be centralized players like Highlight or like Bright Moments or whoever it was that kind of control everything. And we decided from the beginning that artists need to own their own smart contracts, and that's been I think something that over time more and more artists appreciate. We're in an interesting moment in the space where there's some uncertainty about where the market is headed. It still feels very early, things like this. And so as people are navigating and thinking about the future, it's so important to us that artists know that their projects are theirs. Their smart contract is 100% controlled by them. We don't have any.
How does that work, Nat?
Yeah.
So let's say I'm an artist, I mint on Highlight, but then Highlight, I mean, probably won't happen anytime soon. But if you decide to shut down Highlight, how do they access the contract?
They simply go to the Block Explorer, so Block Explorer, EtherScan, or BaseScan if it's a project on Base, and all the details, all the functions, all the ways to update the contract are there for them to work with. It's a little bit
They are the
technical.
admins, right? And they are the admins. Okay,
That's right.
got it. No, that's fantastic. And these artists that were in the bright moments, what were their names? I believe I saw the piece from Elisa
Yeah.
Southern.
Julien Gachadois. There's Liza Struthers-Jobin, William Watkins,
William
and
Watkins, yes.
Nicolas Daniel.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, for everybody listening, all these artists and all the collections we're mentioning will be in the show notes, so you can access them easily. That's great, Nat. And what's next for Highlight? Because it feels like you have done quite a lot in a short period of time. You are already collaborating with great artists, with Coinbase, with Foundation, with Bright Moments. So what is your focus on for the future? What are you trying to achieve? What are the next steps? If you can tell us a bit about your plan.
We're continuing to focus a lot on our artist toolkit. So there's a bunch of improvements coming there, and that remains a really core focus. There's two areas where we're pushing things a little bit, and the first one I'll mention is we're building a marketplace, and we see the marketplace as really complementary to our creator tooling. It all comes from this place of wanting to help artists succeed and make a living ultimately by selling their work. And the starting point for that is, well, how can I create work? How can I do it in the right way? Where I own the contract, where my code displays correctly, where I can reward collectors with allow lists, where I could run a Dutch auction, and all these different things that we've created. But once a project sells, the question is, what is happening on secondary? And secondary is secondary marketplace, of course. So it's peer-to-peer selling works from collector to collector. We resisted building anything around this for a long time because it didn't seem to us that there was a need for another marketplace. But over the last 6 months, we heard from so many artists and collectors that the landscape was really changing dramatically, and we felt that both artists and art collectors would be served by more of a principled marketplace, and one where just the user experience was better and more focused on art. We know, of course, in the NFT space, there's many different types of projects, and we feel that a marketplace that focuses on art will create a user interface and user experiences that are a little bit different, a little bit better. And there's other benefits around that as well. But yeah, we're focused. Part of our team right now is focused on building that marketplace.
Got it. So yeah, I actually use it before going to Paris. There was this also another big mint, one of those that goes so fast that I almost couldn't mint. So it was the Outcast on Farcaster, which is a PFP, right? But it's interesting because it's more for intellectuals, right? So it's for people that like to read. So I found that interesting, and it's also on Highlight. So that shows that the flexibility, right? So you have generative art. You said you also have one-on-ones and also these kind of PFP collections. So it's very flexible, right? And I saw the marketplace. You're right. That's where I bought on secondary market, and it was quite good. And I think it's fully respecting royalties. Am I right? You're protecting royalties from artists, or is the
Hmm.
buyer, can he choose? How does it works with royalties?
Yeah, royalties are a big area where we think we can do a better job than some of the existing players out there. The situation with royalties, just to recap for listeners, is that um, historically royalties have been on average in the Ethereum NFT space around 5% or
Hmm.
so. And so 2020, 2021, 2022, that was a pretty constant income stream for creators who knew that if they had a project that was successful, they would be paid over time through the secondary transactions that occurred on different marketplaces. But of course, this was a social norm, similar to in some parts of the world. Tipping
Tipping,
at
yeah.
restaurants is a social norm. No one uh, tells you it's a requirement. You don't go to jail if you don't tip somebody. It's just this thing that we all do because we feel that it's important. And with royalties, what happened was there was a set of marketplaces where they launched and they realized that for traders of NFTs, this was a big tax to constantly pay royalties if you were uh, buying and selling hundreds or thousands of NFTs every single day,
Yep.
which some people do. And so some of these marketplaces launched with the ability to set royalties to zero. And that was possible because royalties were a norm. They were not something in the code that could be easily enforced. And
Yep.
so over time, this led to a lot of competition between leading marketplaces on how they were approaching royalties. And ultimately, the biggest marketplace historically, which is OpenSea in the Ethereum world, decided to stop supporting royalties altogether. It's actually this Thursday, February 29th, I think, is when all support for royalties on OpenSea is going to end up
So
until
right now I can select, right? Right now I can select if I want to pay royalties or just uh, skip them. But so
Yep.
after Thursday,
Hmm.
even that option won't be there.
Yeah, after Thursday, any collection on OpenSea, as I understand it, based on just what they've said publicly, any collection you can mark the royalty down to 0%. Up until now, there's a small set of projects that they have supported royalties on, but that will stop on February 29th.
Wow.
So our approach, we step back, we talk to a lot of artists, talk to a lot of different types of collectors, and the approach we're taking with our marketplace is it's pragmatic, but it's hopefully also optimistic. And we looked at a lot of data as well in coming up with our approach on this. And that is royalties by default are the full royalty. So if you decide to sell an NFT, the default is I will pay the artist or the creator the full royalty amount. Now you can edit that on Highlight down, but only to 2%. And we chose 2% because it is dramatically higher than any. Well, the average we see at this point across the market is about 0.5% in royalties are paid now, and they've just dropped week by week over the
Yeah.
last 6 months or so. And so we said, we could try to engineer a system where we enforce 100% of royalties all the time, but we don't think that such a marketplace is going to get traction. And the reason that we felt that way is There's been a few experiments run by others with that, and they haven't gained traction. And the reality is that any marketplace requires liquidity. You
Yeah.
need different types of buyers and sellers to come together, and you see this in any market. In the housing market, for example, where I live in California, you have families looking for homes, and then you have people who are flipping houses and have sort of different incentives and think about the cost of doing business a lot differently.
Yeah.
So we respect that. We have a lot of respect for people out there who are trading NFTs, who see this as a way of creating income for themselves. But we also know that there's a huge number of collectors out there who want to abide by the social norm and
Yeah.
want to uphold this thing that got so many artists excited about creating NFT projects a couple years ago. And in looking at the data, we saw a really strong difference between projects that were art projects and the amount of royalties that are paid just in the last couple months. And then other types of projects, such as PFP projects, where
Right.
royalties have really evaporated. So to us, there's really clear evidence that this norm exists within the digital art community. We think that the approach we're taking is one that, at the end of the day, it's not our our principles don't matter as much as if we can help artists make more money. And so
Yeah.
that's the approach with the 2% floor that we have set.
No, I think that's a very thoughtful approach. It's and I agree. I've seen some marketplaces, some experiments trying to enforce royalties, but it's just it's not working out. And so I like this flexible approach. Um, and besides all the features you already mentioned, that I saw one that I think it's going to be very important, and it's so first, as you mentioned, you are supporting many L2s, and
Yep.
I've seen a lot of traction on base, but also in other L2s. And what's complicated at the moment is a bridging, right? Bridging between L1 and L2, and also I've seen many collectors and artists kind of, being a little bit, how can you say that they are not happy with the fragmentation, right? It feels there are so many places now, and where should you go? Where should you be? So, what are your thoughts on the fragmentation, and what are your thoughts on the bridging? Because I think you have a very cool feature that you
Mm-hmm.
could. So basically, Highlight takes care of the bridge. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
right, can you tell us a little bit about those two things?
Yeah. So the idea here is we're in a world now where there's many different chains. So when we
Yeah.
say L2s, we're talking about um, chains that are built on top of Ethereum,
Yep.
are cheaper and faster, and these other things that we like. Much, much cheaper, for example, for a generative artist to create a fully on-chain project on an L2, such as Base relative to Ethereum mainnet. And to put it in perspective, just to pause for a moment on that point, we were chatting with Zancan in Paris, and he was telling us that for one of his prior projects, he spent uh, 8 ETH, I think, on
Wow.
getting the code for his project and putting it on Ethereum mainnet. And it was
Wow.
something like 50% of the proceeds of the project were just a cost to him of backing up the code on chain.
Yeah.
So it's a massive amount of money. I think ETH is now at 3,000 US dollars today. So $24,000 spent just
Yeah.
on data storage for your artwork. And that same cost, so to do the same thing when Michael deployed his project with us last week, it was a few dollars to put his project on chain. So huge benefit there to artists, and we should keep that in mind as we think about, why are we seeing this movement towards L2s? It's
Yeah.
cheaper for everybody, but dramatically so for many types of artists. The problem is on the collector side. In general, we have a extremely technical and complex set of user experiences, as we know in this space, from creating a self-custodied wallet, remembering or storing your seed phrase, figuring out how to connect to different networks. So if you've never used Base before, or Optimism, or Zora, you'll have to add these details to your wallet to be able to mint on them. And then after you've gone through all that pain and hardship, we tell you you have to bridge currency over to that different network if you just want to buy something. And for these L2s, they're all using, in general, Ethereum. So Ethereum that exists on Ethereum mainnet, you put it through a bridge, and then it pops out on the other side in a way on one of these L2s. And this creates a lot of friction. And we've seen
Yeah.
on previous projects that it's a huge deterrent for people to want to buy an artwork on an L2. So the feature we call cross-chain minting.
Mm-hmm.
Cross-chain minting is the ability just to select Ethereum that might exist on any other chain besides the chain that the artwork is on, and use that to pay. So if you have Ethereum that's back on mainnet, you don't need to bridge. You can just use that to pay. If you have Ethereum on Optimism, for example, and you want to mint something on mainnet, you could do that. So any currency on any chain can buy artwork on any other chain.
That's amazing. And how does it work technically? Are you doing the bridge at the moment, or are you doing something like Highlight pays for it in the right chain, and you just stake the ETH on the other chain? How does it work, like, more
Yeah,
technically?
it's the latter. It's wallets are funded with
Yeah.
the right currency on these different chains, and once we're able to accept payment on the other chain, we then mint the NFT for you.
Right. But it only works if they have that currency, right? So they can do it for ETH,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say if you have to pay with, what's the name of the Matic maintaining
Mm-hmm. And
Polygon,
Polygon.
you
Yep.
you cannot, if I have ETH, you don't do that bridge, right? Or you do that?
Not currently, but it's something. Yeah, it's something we're looking at. It would be great in the future to have
Yeah.
any type of currency be
Yeah.
be usable.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the future. To be honest, Nat, probably. I mean, you innovated there in terms of providing the bridge, but I can see this happening in other places as well, because this is just so much better for the collectors and even for the artists, to be honest. So it kind of removes, it abstracts all this technology that's happening inside, in between the blockchains, in between Ethereum in this case, and it just makes sense. And it comes to, I mean, maybe we can talk a little bit about trends, but uh, this topic, do you feel like, we look into the future, 5, 10 years from now, you do you think people will still care as we do right now about which blockchain are they using exactly, or do you think the conversations will be more like on the applications, and what we are actually doing, and not so techy, similar to what happens with the internet, right? We are not talking about the protocols, which protocol are you using, HTTP,
Mm-hmm.
HTTPS. It's more about which website are you using, right? Which, maybe the client, the Gmail client, which browser. So more the front facing applications. Do you feel like this is something that will happen with the blockchains in maybe not too far away?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that early internet analogy is a good one. There were days when back in the 90s when certain web browsers couldn't display certain file formats or
Yeah.
things like that. And as these standards took hold, everything became interoperable, and there was just kind of support across the board for any type of media that you wanted to create or consume.
Yeah.
And I think in the same way, we're going to see a lot more fluidity with these uh, on-chain transactions. It's all going to be abstracted away in different ways.
Right. Right. Yeah. I just wonder how which blockchains will things will actually get mint, and that will be the cheapest one at the end of the day. So if it's all abstracted, there needs to be like, cost, maybe security, the security part. But yeah, I believe it won't be as important as it is right now. It will be more transparent.
Yeah.
Um, what are you excited about? I mean, coming back from Paris, I think we saw a great vibe, right? Right? I think there was, the excitement. We could see it around the streets, around the events.
Hmm.
You think we are in a bull market, that, or do you expect things to get hotter? Bitcoin is going up, Ethereum is going up. What
Hmm.
do you feel? What do you, when you talk to collectors, to artists? What are your thoughts on where we are right now? What are you excited about right now?
Hmm. I think we're in a moment of tremendous creativity and innovation, and I feel incredibly optimistic about the future and really lucky to be a small part of everything that's happening.
Yeah,
I think there's I think there's concern about how depressed NFT volumes have been. For example, the market has been quite slow over the last 12 months or so during the bear market. But under the surface, the things that I'm paying attention to are really, really exciting. And so some of those things are technical, and we've talked about L2s, we've talked about the amount of interest that L2s are getting. Things like account abstraction or embedded wallets, that experience I was describing
yeah,
about the event in Paris, how someone with an email address could simply claim an NFT without having to pay gas,
yeah,
gets me really excited as a builder, because these are the things that happen sort of slowly, and then all at once there will be
yeah,
much more robust, much more friendly consumer experiences, I think, that we're going to see play out over the course of this year. And then the real thing I'm excited about is just the creativity that I see from artists and other types of creators with what they're doing on chain.
yeah,
And so I think we saw an explosion of incredible digitally native artwork over the last few years, and I just see that continue to evolve in all kinds of unique and interesting ways. Uh, we've talked a bit already about the Zancan project, but the idea that a code-based artwork could be collected by 50 or 60,000 people, maybe more, we'll see what the final number is, I think is really fascinating. And I think it speaks to really a new type of art where, because it's digital, it can extend to be collected by millions or even billions of people in the future. So I think that's incredibly interesting. And I know artists like Zancan are really motivated by that to really push the medium as far as they can go.
yeah,
We're seeing projects every day from people who are using our toolkit to explore new ideas, to do things that we never thought of, that we didn't think were possible, that are really interesting. And then there's this whole side of it, which I think Farcaster is now the center of, or feels like the center of, which is around decentralized social and some of these new experiences, like the one you had, Callo, with just minting something with the press of a button
yeah.
on your phone, but not just that, within a social feed, within a social experience. And we know that everything digital ultimately has this social dimension to it, which is really interesting.
Yeah,
So
and I
yeah.
think that, I mean, I think the use case, the more popular is minting, right? Minting an NFT, but it works for many more things. So for my newsletter, I've been getting a lot of subscribers through frames, and it's, I think, around 3,000 over the past month, maybe
Amazing.
past month and a half.
Yeah.
And it's an example, but I think it could be applied. So what's happening on Forecaster could be for minting, but it could be for all kinds of experiences, right? In my case,
Hmm.
a newsletter, but it could be a website, could be a product, could be maybe getting collectors into Highlight. So there are many use cases, and I
Yeah.
agree. I'm also very, very excited with what's happening on Farcaster. And yeah, I've seen many platforms, and Highlight is one of the ones kind of integrating quickly, like from day one into the ecosystem. So that's great to know. Um, what are you worried about Nat? What are you worried about these days?
I take a pretty long-term perspective, so I'm not, I'm not too worried. But I think what's on a lot of people's minds is the return of the market. But
Mm,
I think that's maybe I think that's a overly simple way to think about it. I think it's true that there's a lot of collections or collectors who feel like they're underwater. Prices
mm,
have not sustained at the levels of 2021, and so I think
yeah,
there's some real questioning about when the market will come back. That's incredibly valid. I think on the other hand, the framing I think about is the timing of broader adoption. So to me, and I think probably to you and everyone listening, the transition into digital ownership of art and then these other cultural artifacts that we talked about, like the outcasts, PFP that you mentioned, digital ownership is going to be a very mainstream thing that I think
yeah,
millions and billions of people will participate in. And the question is when and how, and what
yeah,
are the factors or what are the variables in the world we live in today that need to change to help accelerate that. And I think it's also important to think about artists. We were together with dozens of artists in Paris last week, and there's a lot of uncertainty around their prospects for earning
yeah,
sustainable income. There's a lot of uncertainty on the side of builders like myself who are building in a market that's currently too small to really sustain a business.
hmm,
And despite that uncertainty, I feel pretty hopeful. I feel like there's a few variables that might change in the near term that could bring the market back, and more importantly, to my point, bring 100x or 1000x more participants into the ecosystem. So
yeah,
we can talk about some of those, but I think just the question is the timing of where we're at with the adoption of not just the technology, of course, but this paradigm around digital ownership.
yeah. No, I agree. I think the digital ownership narrative is what will make kind of everything change once people understand that and you know are feel okay with owning things digitally and paying for them, but also willing to pay and willing to collect. And it doesn't need to be art necessarily. It could be, an article, could be an episode of a podcast, could be just something from your favorite band, a skin in a game. And once that is all connected through the applications that we use in our daily life, is when you can share your digital identity, and that's when people will really want to collect things because that's how they express themselves. And
Yep.
I think things like the Apple Pro, the Vision Pro, the Quest by Facebook, these sort of VR experiences, digital experiences, I think that could be the catalyst to all these digital objects that you're working with, writing about. I don't
Yep.
know how fast will that be. I don't know how easy it will be to integrate if they want to be integrated in these tools, these VR sets. Hopefully, right? Because that will mean the blockchain is integrated there. Probably we can do it ourselves. We don't need their permission. Just I haven't. I'm not an expert on how they work, but I could see that as a catalyst. Um, and yeah, I am also a little bit worried and things that we cannot control, right? Like what happened last year, the last 2 years with FTX, right? With Luna and these sort of, you know, um, crazy moments that kind of came out of nowhere, right? So I'm always a little bit careful with that kind of, scenarios, but that's out of our control, right? Yeah. So Nat, what are the catalysts or the scenarios or actions that you see happening that could help to bring more people to the space, like the masses, to Web3 and the blockchain and owning digital assets?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. There's probably 5 or 6 things that need to happen for real mainstream adoption to take place. The first one is the user experience and the world of using a browser or a wallet rather, such as MetaMask for self custody. Uh, is something that's still so technical. It's hard to imagine when millions of people are going to do that. Luckily, we're seeing a huge amount of innovation from companies like Privy and Dynamic for abstracting that complexity and making it really easy to use an email address or a social login to create a wallet. The second thing clearly to me is security and just the safety of your assets, because we're still in a world where there's so many scams happening, and we see it feels like almost every week there's some other prominent person who's had their wallet hacked and their assets stolen. So it definitely needs to be more in place there to help people recover their assets, to prevent scams or theft from happening in the first place. And I think we're going to see big strides towards that with some of the new standards that are coming out, and the way that accounts are being abstracted to give users more control and more safety over them. Then I think that's sort of on the friction side. That's friction that we need to remove. I think on the other side, there's the incentives. How do you get someone excited about owning a digital asset? And that's where I think you're right on the hardware side. And maybe it's Vision Pro or Quest or some of these VR experiences. I think what's on my mind coming from Paris is even just digital displays. Bright Moments does an amazing job with digital displays, but I think for many people, their digital art collections are somewhat ephemeral. They exist in your wallet. You look at them often, maybe, but there's no way to display them for your friends or for your family. That's really simple. And so there's products out there. There's companies such as Samsung, for example, that have the Frame TV, which a lot of people have, which is a pretty accessible device. And I don't know if you've looked at the sort of art mode that's on TVs like this, but it's a pretty sad state of
Yeah,
affairs with.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Actually, I was gonna buy one, but yeah, it's I tested it and I didn't like it, and it's not working well with NFTs, right?
There's no support for
Yeah.
NFTs. Yeah, so I think something like a really visionary move by a company such
Mm.
as Samsung, or maybe it's another player in the space, to just uh, build a store where you can purchase artwork through your TV and display it properly, I think would be a big unlock. And then I think there's these other surfaces, right? So that's a surface maybe that's physical or IRL in your home or your office. But then there's the social networks that we spend so much time on, hours and hours a day, and that's where I'm really excited by Farcaster and by the potential for your the art that you collect, the culture that you participate in, to be something that's visible and interactive and social in the way that I think they're doing with Farcaster frames.
Yeah, no, that I think those are great elements that will definitely, improve or accelerate the space. And Nat, we're coming close to the hour, and I like to ask a tough question to all the guests, which is, where can you name three artists
Mm-hmm.
that people should pay more attention to? And you came from Paris recently. Maybe you found some artists there that you enjoy, that you
Mm-hmm.
appreciate, or maybe from the past. So three artists that people should pay more attention to.
Yeah, it's really tough to pick three, but you told me about this question in advance, so I thought about it. I think the first one I'll mention is 0xFF, or rather FFF, and there's a recent project, You Are Here, from this artist, which are it's each piece is a digital artwork that you can transfer between different blockchain
Ah,
networks.
yeah.
And so when you move a token between chains, it leaves a mark. So you see visually the journey of the work. This is really topical because, as we've been talking a lot already today about L2s, this idea of exposing visually the journey of a digital object as it can move between different networks, I think is really interesting. And this artist 0xFFF has done a few other projects that are similarly conceptual and have just really interesting gestures towards some of the different dynamics that we see emerging in digital art. The second person I would name is Kevin Escherich. Kevin is a younger artist. He is someone who's done a couple projects so far. He's maybe most well known for a project he did on Highlight called Catalog. Catalog was a 500 piece series, and they were random pictures of products from Costco, which is a giant suburban store in some parts of the world. And the artist Kevin, he saw this really as a generative art project, and he wrote it with just a few lines of code, and it made calls to the Costco image servers, and really was a commentary on consumer culture and how even digital art, which is this really nascent space, is being commoditized in some ways, which is pretty interesting. But Kevin's a very interesting person, and I'm really excited for some of the other projects he's working on. I think the last one I would call out is a project that we helped release last week in collaboration with Gazelle Art House, a company called Verisart for Art Dubai. And it's a project by Melissa Wiederacht, who's one of my favorite artists, and Ana Maria Caballero. It's called Miss Metaverse, and it's again social commentary on the sort of beauty contest that is happening, that plays out online between different artists, and your online persona as being a big driver of your commercial success as an artist. What's really cool about this one for me is that they created an interface where you can enable your webcam, and you can see yourself through this lens of Miss Metaverse. So you see a distorted view of yourself, which is really cool. The type of thing that is, typically you don't see with many digital art projects, but are definitely possible with tools like Highlight, where you can access different controls. In this case, like your the camera settings for your browser.
Yeah. So Ana Maria was in the podcast a couple of weeks ago. So if anybody wants to learn from Ana Maria directly about this project, you should tune in. I think it's 2 episodes before this one, probably number 32. But yeah, I think it's released by the time this goes out. And yeah, that project is quite interesting, as you mentioned, and yeah, I discussed with Ana Maria a little bit about it and how it relates to, also this sense in Latin America, how Miss Universe is so important across the culture, and I think that's also where she got the idea. But Nat, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, and congratulations and all the improvements and all the hard work with Highlight. I think it's incredible the amount of collaborations you have been doing. And looking forward and all these exciting features like the bridging. I think the bridging between L2s and L1s is really powerful. And yeah, congrats again.
Thanks for having me. Always fun to chat with you, Carlo. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye, Nat.